2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome into the DNVR Broncos post-game show presented by Breckenridge Brewery. Shout out to Breckenridge Brewery for bringing you these post-game live pods. Zach, not fun that game there.
No, it wasn't, Ryan. Almost fun. I mean, this one just did feel different than last week. It just felt like this truly would have been a miracle of all miracles, Ryan. And to me, I mean, it was just crazy that there were multiple times where I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, it really is a one-possession game, including up until the very end. But it just didn't feel like the Broncos ever deserved to win this game.
It didn't. And the biggest difference, just the defense. Obviously the Falcons have a good offense, and Matt Ryan is an underrated quarterback, probably better than he gets credit for. But the fact that you were without your top 2 corners, like, you just aren't going to win. Like, you aren't going to get enough stops. I felt like there was hope going into it, and as soon as I started watching guys like Zacharias or whatever his name is tear up
old Zach, ZAC.
Tear up Devontae Harris, it was like, okay, well, what are we going to do up here? The defense did bow up a little bit in the second half, and that's why this ended up being a 1-score game. But that's why it felt like they were out of the game, because it didn't feel like you could just count on the defense to get a stop. In fact, it felt quite the opposite. It felt like you couldn't. Now, that's not why they lost the game. And Zach, let's just jump into our biggest takeaways here. I'll get yours. When you turn this game off and come sitting over here, what's freshest on your mind? What's your biggest takeaway from this?
Well, I'm worried that these fourth quarters are garbage time, points and scores. Now, obviously, last week doesn't necessarily go down as garbage time because they made something into it and turned it into good things. But I do have to worry now, Ryan. The Broncos just went up against two teams that are excellent at blowing games, at ruining fourth quarters, at blowing leads. And that's when the Broncos have taken advantage. That's when the Broncos have found offense. And yeah, it's great to find and to get going against teams' weaknesses. But Ryan, what happens next week when, the Oakland Raiders aren't good at blowing fourth quarter leads or aren't known for that, or against the Dolphins? That's my biggest takeaway from this. And it brings the question back up, who's at fault on the offense for the slow starts? Another abysmal start from everyone, not just Drew Lock, not just Pat Shurmur, not just from Phillip, Lindsay, everyone on the offense from the first, 2.5 quarters. And it makes me think, oh boy, who is this Broncos offense? Is it fourth quarter offense the past 2 weeks? Is it the first half offense the past 2 weeks? And to me, because this is a loss, it makes me lean more on that it's the first half offense.
What a tough conversation to have, and I'll just jump into my biggest takeaway here, and it answers the question: who's at fault? Well, first of all, let me just say, many are at fault. It's not, it's fun to make that the headline. It's not an answerable question in the sense that you just say, "Here's who's at fault. Change this, and everything's fixed." It's not that simple. So maybe it should be who's most at fault for the Denver Broncos offensive woes. And I can't believe I'm saying this, Zach, but I don't think it's a fit between Drew Lock and Pat Shurmur. And Pat Shurmur, it's his job to adjust to Drew Lock, not Drew Lock's job to adjust to Pat Shurmur. And so for me, Pat Shurmur is most at fault for the Broncos offensive woes. The game plans that he is putting together are just atrocious. The lack of involvement from Phillip Lindsay is bad. The inability to get Drew Lock into a rhythm is bad. The 2nd and 10 runs are going to make my head explode. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the rest of the season if that continues. It is asinine. It goes against everything we know. It goes against all analytics. and it's not working. And by the way, doing it with Melvin Gordon is 10 times as bad as doing it with Phillip Lindsay. So it's not working between Drew Lock and Pat Shurmur. And unfortunately, I don't know if Drew's going to get to the next year to have a chance to be with another offensive coordinator, a sixth offensive coordinator in 7 years it would be for him. But if he does, I don't think keeping Pat Shurmur around is the right thing.
So are you calling for Mike Shula to finish this year? I mean, this seems like it's bigger than just one game right now for you, Ryan, and I understand that.
No, I don't think so. I don't know if I'm calling for that. I think you might have to try to figure it out without him. Although if Mike Shula, is going into someone's office and saying, "Hey, look, I watched the Scangarello offense at the end of last year, and I saw what they were doing correctly with Drew Lock, and I can run my own version of that." Then maybe you make that call. But those two guys are two peas in a pod, Shurmur and Mike Shula. So I don't know how much that's going to change anything. But maybe there just needs to be a little fire lit under Pat Shurmur because his game plans are trash, and that's why the Broncos are getting in these massive holes that they're having to dig themselves out at the end. Now, I know people are losing their minds probably somewhere listening to this saying, Drew Lock this, Drew Lock that. Drew Lock has to be better. He has to be better. But one of these people is basically a rookie. He's in his second year. He has not yet played a full season worth of NFL games. The other one is a longtime NFL veteran. I'm absolutely positively going to give the benefit of the doubt here to the kid who's shown a lot of flashes rather than the offensive coordinator who can't figure out how to put him in a position to flash more.
Yeah, and Ryan, to me, when it comes to Drew Lock, the biggest thing that we need to know the rest of this season, at the end of the first quarter, I have had him in my notes as a below 80 passer rating type quarterback. At halftime, the same. Third quarter, the same. Fourth quarter, a little better than that. Now that pick was absolutely brutal. What's it come out that he is at the end of the game? 77.9 passer rating. Ryan, that's unacceptable. That will not get it done in the NFL. But it's not just all on him. But that's where Drew Lock was today. I think he fit his passer rating number pretty darn well. And he hasn't really over this past month. The passer rating's been off from how he looked. He was playing better than it. He wasn't as playing good as it. But today, that's what he was. He was a 77.9 passer. And he was struggling with the play calls again at the beginning of the game. What I mean by that is they were not on the same page. And again, it looked like that Pat Shurmur was just trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And then the fourth quarter comes around, just like last week. And Pat Shurmur changes that round hole into a square hole. And then it just starts working and it just starts chugging along. So the question is Pat Shurmur not fitting with Drew Lock until the fourth quarter? And then Pat says, shoot, my game plan wasn't working. Let's just change it to what I know Drew does well. And then they do that and Drew starts going off. If that's the answer, then Vic Fangio needs to go sit down or have a socially distant meeting with Pat Shurmur and say, enough with your offense. Look, Pat, you're good enough to make Drew good when you play to his strengths. Stop messing around. Do that from the start. Or is really what's going on, Ryan, is his defenses are just playing prevent. They're letting Drew Lock move down the field, but they're just not allowing the huge play to happen. And that's how Drew Lock starts clicking. And then really when you fall back on it, it's not just Pat Shurmur's fault. It's not just Drew Lock's fault. It's not just the offensive line fault. It's everyone on the offense's fault. And that is unfortunately the worst answer to have. So no one hopes it's that. Ryan, the easy answer here and the best answer, which is crazy to say, is that it's all on Pat Shurmur. And they can bring someone else in after the season, which would be terrible to have another offensive coordinator in here. But man, if Drew Lock really is this good, the way he played in the fourth quarter of this game and the way he played in the fourth quarter of last game, and it's just the offensive coordinator holding him back, well, then bright things are in the future for the Broncos. But if it's just defenses play this prevent, then it's not good news for the future.
It's just not that simple as much as we want it to be. It's a combination of things. Today, a massive problem was the offensive line. People want to get mad at Drew for drifting out of the pocket. Well, he has a couple choices here: drift out of the pocket or get sacked, or end up almost turning the ball over, because the few times that he was trying to step up in the face of pressure today. What ended up happening is someone got pushed right into him, and he ended up, kind of trying to throw and getting hit at the same time. And, that's never a good thing. So the offensive line was a big issue today. I cannot tell you how bad these second and long runs are. The entire premise that you should have coming into a game is you're trying to get into third and shorts. If you look at the Falcons today, they did a masterful job of being in third and 4 or less, maybe even third and 5 sometimes. And Pat Shurmur calling these 2nd and 10 runs leaves Drew Lock in 3rd and 7, an astronomical amount. It's like every other drive, they're looking at 3rd and 7 on the first series because they called a run on 2nd and 10. That has to stop. That has to stop. And so that's one of the reasons why Drew Lock is succeeding in the fourth quarter, because Pat Shurmur shouldn't have the ability to make those calls anymore, although shockingly, he still did it a couple times in the fourth quarter, which almost, it's a good thing I live on the ground floor is what I'll say. That's got to stop. The offensive line has to be better. It was rough out there for a lot of guys. The Drew Lock interception, inexcusable throw, but the throw isn't as bad as Cushenberry and Schlottmann just deciding not to block the biggest interior pass rushing threat out there. Now, I realize they didn't make that call, but you guys are right next to each other. Just communicate. Like that miscommunication cannot happen. You literally just turn to him and say, "That's your guy," or "That's my guy." Like, how? I don't know how that happens. It's brutal. And then Drew Lock compounds their mistake with a bigger mistake of his own, trying to do too much there. He knew that play was going to work, and that's why he threw it. He knew that play was going to work. Jerry Jeudy was going to be wide open coming across the middle of the field, and he just wanted it to happen too much. And you take your step back and you throw sidearm, well, the ball goes upwards and you throw a pick. So there is a lot of issues, but Shurmur, to me, is very solidly number one. And then it's Drew Lock and the offensive line and the youth. Youth is not a problem, but it's a fair excuse. It's the youngest offense in football. So there's a lot of things that you can look at here. What I just have to say is there's just no point in trying to write the book on Drew Lock now. 8 more games to go in this season. You hope that he and Pat Shurmur can get on the same page. Pat Shurmur can realize what he's doing wrong, although it's not encouraging at this point because he does the same thing every week. But you hope he can get on the same page and Drew Lock can buy himself some more time because that's what he needs. He just needs time on the field to progress as an NFL quarterback.
And that's why Drew Lock's not getting benched. And I'm happy that Vic Fangio said it last week, that it never crossed his mind to bench him. He knows. Vic Fangio said it just a couple of weeks ago. Drew Lock has to play in order to get better and prove if he's the truth or not. Ryan, one thing that bugged you was the 2nd and 10 runs. What bugged me was all of the checkdowns on 3rd down. I understand that's going to happen once or twice in the game, and that's probably the smart play. A punt isn't necessarily the worst play. But if it happens like every first down for the first 3 quarters, that is a bad play, and that needs to change. And I don't know if that's on Pat Shurmur for only having one route go past the first down marker, and that's his first read, and that's always covered up. Well, then it probably is good to throw the check down. But it just happened time and time again. I guess it's a mix of the two because sometimes I did see receivers running open. Jerry Jeudy is always open, by the way. It is just incredible how open he is. And it really seemed like in the fourth quarter, Jerry Jeudy became Drew Lock's first read, and he was hitting them, and it was easy. I don't know if that's not the case in the first half or what's going on there, but he needs to be the first read on every single 3rd down because I'm so sick and tired on 3rd and 7, like you were saying, that it sets up with the 2nd down runs. On 3rd and 10, on 3rd and 13, Drew Lock throwing it 3, 4, 5 yards with defenders who are just right there and swallow him up, and then it's a punt. So those two things together, you're never going to have a good offense doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. You called it before the season. You called the problem that we were going to run into here with Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay, and the hard-headedness, I guess I'll say, to continue to pound Melvin Gordon into the back of the offensive line instead of running the ball with Phillip Lindsay more is mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. Melvin Gordon, it ain't it. Like, that's just, I don't know any other way to put it. He just ain't it. And Phillip Lindsay very clearly is it. Now, not great stats for Phil today, but I mean, we know this. This is a long-standing thing in the NFL. For a running back to get going, you have to give them enough carries to get into a rhythm. Phillip Lindsay, I mean, you didn't even get close to giving Phillip Lindsay a chance to get into a rhythm, or Melvin Gordon for that matter. But it's become very clear at this point that the guy that you would prefer to get into a rhythm is Phillip Lindsay. Again, another thing that you just leave scratching your head saying, I'm trying to find the stats. I don't know how many carries Phil finished with.
I got him. I got him right here, Ryan. Phil finished with 8 carries, 23 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. Melvin, 6 carries, 18 yards, 3 yards per carry. And to me, it starts with that first number. How many carries both of those guys are getting? And to start off, both of those guys should be getting more than that. This game, you got to take a step back and say, this wasn't just, why aren't they giving Phil the ball? He's running for 10 yards per carry like he has the past 2 games. Of course that was going on. But Ryan, Drew Lock dropped back 56 times to pass. Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon had 14 rushes total. 14 runs for your running backs, 56 dropbacks for your quarterback. That is a losing game plan. And what drives me nuts, Ryan, is we're going to hear the exact same thing that we heard last week. And that's going to be, well, we were down. No, it was not an even run to pass ratio at the beginning of the game. You started off just passing. And then, of course, when you're down 21 points, I get abandoning the run. But Ryan, why, just regardless of the running back, why are they just abandoning this except on 2nd and 10?
Yeah. Also, I kind of disagree with that being a big drop from Phil. He was going to gain 10 yards and the clock was going to run 20 seconds off. Hate to see the drops regardless, but I don't think it had really an impact on the result. What was your question again? Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Regardless of if it's Phil or Melvin getting the ball, why aren't the Broncos running the ball a decent amount, a lot to start the game? Again, I get it when you're down 21 points that you're going to abandon it, but this was never close. Yeah,
Zach, I wish I had an answer for you. But the offensive coordinator, that's why. You abandoned an offense that thrived on the quarterback being under center and running the ball and having a fullback on the field for a guy who loves to go 3 wide and come out of the shotgun. And I guess, you thought that was the coordinator that was going to give Drew Lock the best opportunities to succeed. But as we're seeing now, development matters. And Drew Lock was developing under that offense. And so it's no surprise that this year he's better out from under center and he's better on play action. I think it was like in the 4th quarter when the Broncos had no hope of running the ball. Like there was no reason to run the ball at that point, but they ran a play action and Drew threw a strike and, they got a first down and it was like, yeah, just, you can do this at any time. There's no, it doesn't it just run the ball more, but even if you aren't, run more play action. So, they abandoned that offense for this offense. This offense doesn't run the ball as well and it doesn't run the ball as much. And so that's something that they're going to have to figure out because it's very clear to me that this team needs to be running the ball on first down and gaining 3, 4, 5 yards. They need to be multiple on second down unless it's 2nd and long, in which they should be passing it. But not every time. Far, far, far too often, it's incomplete pass, run for 3, incomplete pass. And everything, it's just so backwards there. Like, if you want to run the ball once per series, run the ball on first down. And if it doesn't work then you have 2 downs to gain what you didn't get on that down. It's so out of sync. It's so out of rhythm. There's no creativity. We have not seen the Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay package since week 1. I realized there was a gap there where neither of them were healthy. But, where is it? Where's that? Where's the pistol? Drew was awesome out of the pistol last year. Where is the pre-snap motion? Where's any it looks like a guy. It looks like a guy. When you play someone in Madden who just calls the top suggestion on coach suggestions and just runs it, and they don't look at what the defense is showing them, and they just run it. And I'm not saying that literally, but this offense just feels so vanilla. There's no creativity. There's no misdirection. There's no any of that.
And when there is those things, Ryan, it's good. I mean, how much do we all love seeing KJ Hamler taking the ball into space on a little run? Love seeing that. It's worked every single time we've seen it. We see the speed when he gets the ball, and you do it once. And I'm not saying you call the exact same play again, but you do creative things. Did you see Patrick Mahomes today? He's doing end arounds and moving. That's what you should be doing with KJ Hamler time and time again. Ryan, at times I'm saying this offense is looking like what it's supposed to be looking, where Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler combined for 24 targets, 200 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. KJ Hamler's moving around. And at times I'm going, banging my head against a brick wall going, what are they doing? It's crazy that they just don't play to their strengths more often. And this is just every single game. This was just a really good game to be able to see every single side of that. And another one of the things to throw in there, Ryan, you were saying, why aren't we seeing Melvin Gordon, Phillip, Lindsay on the field more? Another one, Albert O and Noah Fant. Why aren't we seeing those two guys on the field more? Our guy BK asked Pat Shurmur last week about it, and Pat Shurmur fought back with him and said, we are doing that. They're on the field a lot, and they're going to be on the field together a lot. Didn't see it. And now obviously wishing the best for Albert Okwuegbunam, who has a knee injury, was out for the rest of the game. After the game, Vic Fangio just updated it saying it was a knee injury, which we knew did not have any further details there. So really, really hoping for the best for Alberto as he's really taken off these past couple of weeks. But they're not doing the creative things that seem so obvious that at least they have a chance to work.
Yeah, you hope for Alberto that he's okay, Alberto Okwuegbunam. I have no clue what happened, obviously. It kind of, to me, looked like the Mahomes injury last year, where it looks a lot worse than it is because it hurts a lot and it's scary. And that's, of course, the dislocated kneecap. It's hard to see because he's wearing the dark tights under there, but it looked maybe like his kneecap was a little out of place, which obviously will cause you a lot of pain. But Patrick Mahomes played the next week, I believe, or missed one game, maybe. I can't remember. So you hope it's that, not a torn ACL or any of that other crap that happens with the knee. But if and I'll touch wood because I hope this is not the case, if Albert Okwuegbunam is done for the season, you absolutely 100% positively missed your entire opportunity to use the weapon that is him and Noah Fant on the field at the same time. Like, it is mind-boggling. None of that. None of Phillip, Lindsay, and Melvin Gordon anymore. Like I said, no pistol. Very little I formation. It's like the same damn 2 formations the whole game. It's really rough to watch. It's really rough to watch. And I just hope that they figure this out and give Drew Lock a better chance to succeed, because I really believe in Drew Lock, and these games really do very little to my belief in Drew Lock. You see when he can make these throws. You see that he's good when he gets out of the pocket and gets moving. You see that he, it can be accurate, but I understand the frustration of the fans because he's not getting it done. And I think there's a lot at play there. It's a combination of his youth, his development that still needs to happen, and the fact that he's not being put in a position to succeed, and the fact that he's just not playing well enough. Like, it's all of those things, but you should be taking the things that he can't control and doing a better job with those.
Yeah, absolutely should. And Ryan, we've touched on these guys, but here's some positives coming out of the game. If that's okay, if we jump into DraftKings King of the Game right now, because man, Jerry freaking Jeudy looking like that first round pick. He has a career game today. And Ryan, we've seen it on film. When you go back and watch the all 22s after every game, what do you notice? Oh, Jerry Jeudy's wide open. Jerry Jeudy's open. Jerry Jeudy's open. Today, Drew Lock said, Jerry Jeudy's open a lot. So I'm going to look to him. 14 targets. That's exactly what we need from Jerry Jeudy. 7 catches, 125 yards, first 100-yard game for him, and a touchdown on top of that. And, man, he looked like the first-round pick that the Broncos drafted.
Man, that was awesome. The touchdown that Drew Lock threw to Jerry Jeudy is everything we dreamed of when they made the selection. Or before they made the selection, we were hoping they would make the selection. Drew Lock hits his back foot, anticipates that, of course, Jerry Jeudy's going to break his man off, breaks him off, comes open by like 6 yards with one move, catches it, makes an easy move, makes the guy miss easily, and scores. And it was just like, oh, thank the Lord. That's what we were looking up for. That is what we were talking about all offseason. You have to. So this is something that Drew can absolutely do a better job of, and you saw him do it. You know he can do it. Anticipating Jerry Jeudy's openness. When he makes his move, he will be open. That's just how it works. And in fact, even when he's not open when he makes his move, as you saw on the deep ball late, he gets himself open while the ball's in the air. So Drew needs to trust Jerry Jeudy a little more, and I think they took a step in the right direction today, which is just, I can hit my back foot, know Jerry's about to come out of his break, and let the ball go. And Jerry's going to run right into it. But you love to see it, and let's not ignore the fact that KJ Hamler tacked on another 75. So between your first-round pick and your second-round pick, that is 13 catches for 200 yards. And an average of about 15 yards per catch.
Yep.
That'll do.
Yeah, and that's something where props to Pat Shurmur, Drew Lock, whoever there at the end of the game, looking to both of those guys. That's what needs to happen for the rest of this season. Look, we know what Tim Patrick is, Ryan, and he's a darn good receiver that can be on your team as, you know, a good backup to come in and fill in for your number one receiver, or be a very solid third receiver, be a very solid second receiver. We know what Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler can be. Now we need to develop them so that they can be these guys next year, the year after. Jerry Jeudy can be a dominant 1 to Courtland Sutton's 1A or 1B. KJ Hamler can be this explosive guy. We need to see these guys more. And man, when we got to see Jerry Jeudy's potential today, Ryan, you talked about the touchdown he had, and it wasn't on the same degree as Julio's touchdown, but I mean, come on, how open was Julio just on a dirty route? Just killed Michael Ojemudia on that one. Jerry Jeudy, similar. It was to a lighter degree, but similar. And the CBS broadcast said it well in the fourth quarter. They said, when you throw it to Jerry Jeudy, he either catches it or draws the foul. And then there was a response that said, sounds like a young Julio Jones. And man, that's kind of, if you want to take a bright spot from this game, it's that we are seeing the flashes from Jerry Jeudy. And today was a huge flash, his biggest flash. He's been pretty consistent in at least putting up 50 yards per game, and he hasn't felt like incredible. This game didn't feel like, oh my gosh, this is Jerry Jeudy's ceiling to me. It felt like, okay, this is a really good game from Jerry Jeudy. This is something that we can see week after week after week. And you look back and it's 7 catches for 125 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, 14 targets. You'd like to see that go up. Not up, I should say. You'd like to see the catches to targets ratio go up. Right. And that's on Drew, too. And that's also, we'd have to look at the tape to see what happened on each and every target. It also, I'm going to mention this a lot because every game just keeps getting worse and worse. Not having Courtland Sutton just sucks so much. That non-catch from Tim Patrick in the end zone on the fade route. I don't know how to put this other than I didn't think he wanted the ball enough. I thought he wanted the call more than he wanted the ball. And that one, in the first one, that should have been pass interference. It should have been first and goal from the 1. The second one, I felt like he thought, okay, I need to sell it even harder this time because they didn't call it the first time. Instead of just catching the ball because he actually wasn't interfered with. And if he just lays out or gets his second arm up there, we might be talking about a different game entirely.
He didn't put the second arm up.
I know, because he was trying to draw the foul when there wasn't one.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. But if that's Courtland Sutton, that's probably an easy touchdown. Yeah.
And then just what does that do to Jerry Jeudy now? Because teams, if Courtland Sutton were healthy and came back next week and he was 100% ready to go, teams have to be giving more attention to Courtland Sutton than Jerry Jeudy, right? I mean, Jerry Jeudy just had his first 100-yard receiving game, so they're giving him more attention. Well, now what's that do for Jerry Jeudy? Excuse me. I know Tim Patrick has produced at a very high level this season, but he's not Courtland Sutton. He's nowhere close to Courtland Sutton. So what could that do for Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler? And I just love seeing KJ Hamler get involved in the game plan finally on offense. And it wasn't enough.
Not enough, but, little steps in the right direction. The Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy relationship took a step in the right direction today, and you'd love to see that, and hopefully that'll help. Just out of curiosity, Zach, do you, depending on what happens, and let's say Drew stays on a similar track to what he's on right now, do you think the Broncos will make a change at quarterback, make a change at offensive coordinator, or both? Or neither?
Man, something has to change, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Man, can they really go a different coordinator route?
I mean, if you're changing the quarterback, what's the problem with changing the coordinator?
Oh man, so then this conversation would lead it to be that it's the offensive coordinator that's going to change, and then you just give Drew another rough situation in order to develop. If it keeps going like it is right now, though, and we see flashes from Drew where that's 1 out of every 4 quarters, I think it's the quarterback that changes. And I think Vic just gives Pat Shurmur 1 more year. So it's not, what would that be? Like 10 coordinators in 10 years? I mean, that's an exaggeration, but 6-6, 7-7, is that what it would be?
Yeah.
Holy smokes. I mean, so I think that's just why Vic Fangio would give him the benefit of the doubt here.
Well, okay, let's go through it. So you have the last year with John Fox. Who was the coordinator that year?
It was.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So there was one that year.
Yep.
Then, of course, you bring in Gary Kubiak. So that's Kubes and Rick Dennison.
Yep.
Then they're together another. No. Sorry, they're together another
2 years. 2 years.
So now we're at 2 and 3 years. Then you bring in Vance Joseph and Mike McCoy.
Mike goes half the year.
Right. Okay. So you even it up then. Now it's 4 and 4 years, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then you have Fangio and Scangarello, and now you have Fangio and Pat Shurmur. So it's 6 and 6 years.
Brutal. And that's not going to help anyone. John Elway knows that the best. He knows how important that is. And that would be the argument to keep everyone together for another year. But just when you simply look at it, Ryan, and you take away the fourth quarter this week and last week, and you can't really do that. But this Broncos offense isn't scoring any points. None in this entire season with Drew Lock as the quarterback. So you have to take a really deep look and say, who is it and what's going on? Because a change would need to have been made. And Drew Lock has not had a lot of things go his way. But Ryan, at the end of the day, his stats are rough. And I think that's something that just so many people are going to be hammering, whether it's right or wrong, if it continues down this road where Drew ends up being, a sub 80 passer rating quarterback.
He did, I believe, get himself to positive touchdown to interception today.
Yes, he would have with that 2-1 today.
Now it's 7-6, right?
6-5, I believe.
6-5. Got to be better. In the end, his stats actually don't look all that bad, except for the completion percentage. But we know what we saw. It wasn't good from him or anyone else on the offense all day. All right, let's continue with the helmet stickers. We talked Jerry Jeudy. We talked KJ Hamler. Well, I guess we didn't formally give KJ Hamler. I want to give KJ a helmet sticker. Who else do you have?
Well, you got to go to the defensive side, if that's okay. We talked a little defense, and I'm going to Sang Bassi. Man, the Broncos were hosed with their cornerback situation. Against any team, it's going to be really tough not having your 2 top cornerbacks. And the Broncos' 2 top cornerbacks are everything to this team. Boye and Callahan. Callahan, of course, late scratch. That was brutal for the Broncos. And so they come out and they have arguably their 2 top cornerbacks are rookies, Michael Ojemudia, Sang Bassi, and then you just have journeyman, Devontae Harris, Duke Dawson, and a guy you just brought off the practice squad yesterday in Tolliver. And one of those guys really stepped up. One of those guys was the undrafted rookie this year, Essang Bassey. He really impressed me at first with his run stuff, and he had multiple tackles for a loss. He was very impressive. You can tell why Vic Fangio really likes him and why Vic Fangio kept him over Bosby. Now, of course, that's a conversation that we'll have in a few minutes because that's not the right choice, is just keeping one or the other. But you could tell that he is a Vic Fangio type cornerback, willing to get in there, willing to hit. And then he also impressed me in pass coverage too. So I have to give him a helmet sticker.
Absolutely deserved. He was kind of awesome, and I'm happy for him because, he played a lot week 1 and his time has slowly gone down since then. But I think he earned some more playing time today. Man, there's not that many guys that deserve it.
No.
Trying to think if I'm missing someone here. Draymond Jones was solid.
Yeah, you could give him one, I think.
Yeah, I think I'll give him a helmet sticker. But man,
that doesn't sound like the most encouraging helmet sticker.
No, it's it's like we have this extra helmet sticker. So.
We thought we were gonna at least have 4 guys.
Exactly. We have a 4-pack, and they're customized for this week, so we have to give it out. We can't hold on to it for next week. Draymond was good. He had a sack. I guess I'm surprised by how little resistance the defense gave, even knowing what they were going up against. Just because I thought that Vic Fangio kind of had the magic when it came to that. But I think we learned today that there's a breaking point to how many backups you can cover up in a game. Like, last year, Devontae Harris played like 3 games. In the first 2 games, you're like, wow, we didn't even really talk about him. That was good for him. And then the 3rd game, it was like, okay, yeah, he kind of got smoked. And like, there's just so many different cases where a backup comes in and you're like, oh, he didn't really negatively affect the team at all today. And now you just, you look at this game and it's like, okay, so you have 3 backups on the defensive line. And then 3 backups in the secondary, right?
2 backups in the secondary, but then also a backup outside linebacker.
Okay. So
6 of 11, over half your starting defense.
Half of your starting defense was backups. And I just don't think there was any magic Vic Fangio could have pulled out of his hat, especially against this team. Like maybe if it was a one-dimensional team, you would have had a better chance, but they ran the ball well enough to make you honor it. And Matt Ryan, he doesn't miss open guys. That was like my number one takeaway is like, okay, well, if a guy gets open on 3rd down, he's catching the ball and they're moving the chains. And that's, that hopefully Drew Lock was inspired by that because that, you need more of that from him.
Yeah, you certainly do. And Ryan, when you're without more than half of your starters on defense, your stars that are still there have to step up. And that did not happen for the majority of the Broncos stars. And when I'm talking about stars, I'm talking about the big 3 that are still on this Broncos defense. Justin Simmons, who did step up. He's the one that did step up. And that was really an easy pick for him. But still, he came down with the big play. That was an opportunity for the Broncos to really get back in the game before it was like just too late. And the Broncos offense wasn't able to capitalize. But then Kareem Jackson was flying around all day. You love the energy. But he and the other Broncos stud, Bradley Chubb, didn't come up with huge plays, and they also came up with 2 terrible, terrible penalties that you can't have, and that just ruined any Broncos momentum they were going to have. Both 15-yard penalties on the same drive. Kareem, we love the fire that you bring. You can't lower your helmet, and you can't lower your helmet and then make helmet-to-helmet contact. That's a penalty every time. And Bradley Chubb didn't get after Matt Ryan, and then also that roughing the passer penalty, I didn't want to believe it, but it was so bad. I mean, it was so bad. It was like 2 steps after he had thrown the ball, and then he just pushes him, and pretty big. I don't think there was a flop there, or at least he was going to fall over. So you can't have mental mistakes when you're the Broncos, and then you can't have mental mistakes when you're down.
Yeah. The Bradley Chubb one is like a frustration penalty, and that you just can't do that. Like, you have to be smarter than that, and you have to be more composed than that. Like, he pushed him because he wanted to, because he was upset. and frustrated. And it cost the team 15 yards.
He's turning into that Domata Peko type of penalty, unnecessary roughness penalty guy, where it's just not the guy you would expect. And during the week, he is that leader. He's a leader on the field. But then he just comes up with these boneheaded decisions that just that kill him. And again, at that point in the game, it didn't really feel like the Broncos were coming back, but it felt like the Broncos had to get a big stop there, and they just weren't able to.
Yeah. All right. Well, we should have Mace here in a second. I'm excited to hear about, kind of what they're talking about. Curious to see if Vic Fangio was critical at all of Pat Shurmur or just the offensive play calling as a whole. But it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. Obviously, the story of this game is going to be Drew Lock. He's the story of every game, really, this season. Broncos are 3-5 now. Weirdly enough, still a path to 5-5.
Yep.
It's very clear. You beat the Raiders. You beat the Dolphins. You're a 5-5 football team. You're right back into it. So that win last week, we talked about how huge it was. You could now absorb this one. But you're right back to where you were, right? You're right back to where you were going into last week, which is lose the next one, and you're probably buried. And maybe the Broncos, claw their way out of it, play a little better, but it's all going to come down to that Drew Lock, Pat Shurmur relationship. And I don't know. Do you have any theories, any possible advice you can offer them on what they can do to try and get better on the same page?
Let Drew Lock loose. And what I mean by that is get him on the move. And it doesn't have to be 50-yard passes to get him on the loose, but get him out of the pocket. Today, I really liked that Drew Lock tried to stay in the pocket, but it seemed like he was forcing it, just like so many times in the first half last week. He was forcing to do what Pat Shurmur wanted. I think Drew Lock and Pat Shurmur can find a good middle ground there, but it involves getting Drew Lock out on the move. Then he can look deep. Then he can look short. Then he can do those things. But Drew Lock clearly needs help right now, Ryan. He's about an 80 quarterback passer rating right now. And so that means you need to do things to help him out. That means he isn't fully there. That means there's still development left. So break it down so it's half the field for him. You saw when he was on the move today, that's when he was making his best decisions. And it's so clear every single week that that's what he likes to do. And it's so clear that Pat Shurmur just isn't doing that in the first halves.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got our guy here, so let's bring on Andrew Mason coming to you from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's what it's called, right?
Yes, correct. As opposed to what has it been? The Mercedes-Benz Superdome?
Oh, right.
Yeah. Mace, are you rocking the Atlanta Braves mask down there in Atlanta? Do I see that A?
Oh, that's correct. I had to, Zach. You know that. It's a little. Let me get the side right here. Got Atlanta Braves here. We got the number 5 for my guy Freddie Freeman over there. So
nice.
I mean, it's full tilt. Went with the player mask today. And actually, this is what I like about this. And this is a total mask nerd thing. Is it's hard to find adjustable masks, but this is. I like a little more breathing room over on the ear flaps. But it's good to see you guys, even though the result was not what the Broncos wanted today.
Yeah, speaking of being adjustable, a big conversation we've had here is about the relationship or lack thereof between Drew Lock and Pat Shurmur. Mace, why don't you just answer the question? That's the headline of this show. Who is most at fault for the Broncos' offensive woes?
Wow, that's a good question. I think you have to go Shurmur. If we're assessing blame right now, it is Shurmur more than Lock. But it's not that Drew Lock isn't culpable. And I think as we dive into Drew Lock's performance in the next few days, one of the things that I want to see as I review the film, but I noticed a lot watching from the press box today, was once again a lot of the good stuff for Drew Lock was happening with rush 4, drop 7. Now the Falcons, they weren't dropping 10 yards back the way the Chargers were last week. They weren't conceding as much, but it was still somewhat of a similar pattern. So how much of that is even contributing to Drew Lock's success? But you've got to do some things to put him in position. I mean, you take that sequence before the field goal in the first half, and you're just chucking it. Where's the handoff to Phillip Lindsay there? Where's that sort of element with things that have worked for this offense to keep defenses off balance? We didn't see it today. We did not see much of an attempt to keep the Falcons honest defensively, to take them out of their philosophy, to make them confused in any way. And that's concerning. I know you can go through the whole thing of you didn't have the offseason, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? There are things that you ought to be able to do in terms of play calling and to kind of shake things up that you're not doing early on. That's a huge concern.
So, Mace, you're telling me you didn't like 56 passing dropbacks to only 14 combined rushes for Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon?
No. And in fact, you mentioned those numbers, and it reminds me of another November game inside a dome. Now, of course, they had the roof open down here in Atlanta today. But you remember that Bronco-Ram game back in 2014 in St. Louis where the pass-to-run ratio got out of hand? Well, I'll tell you a true story from that. Adam Gase was the offensive coordinator for that game, and I'll never forget bumping into him in the team cafeteria the next day, and he apologized to me. And I'm like, what? Why, Adam? He's like, I let it get away from me. I let the play calling get away from me. We should have run the ball more. We didn't. And I'm like, I'm kind of consoling him, like it's okay, man, you know. But it's funny, like the Adam Gase I know is totally different than the Adam Gase everyone believes him to be.
Mace, what are the chances of you bumping into Pat Shurmur in the Broncos cafeteria tomorrow and him apologizing to you for the game plan today?
Well, let's face it, with COVID 0, but
not happening.
I do think it's worth asking on Thursday about that. I mean, because sometimes what happens to play callers is you're not thinking in terms of run pass ratio. No play caller is thinking like, well, I've got to run 50% of the time. Nobody thinks that way. You're kind of reacting to the flow of the game. But sometimes you get too wrapped up in it that maybe you just have to pause and say, okay, maybe here's a good opportunity for a draw play. Here's a good opportunity to get some outside zone with Phillip Lindsay or Melvin Gordon. And these are the things that over the long haul of the game end up paying off. And we're not seeing that. It's frustrating to watch because the Broncos have the horses to be able to do this.
Yeah. And something that's not going to help Phillip Lindsay's case that I just remembered from this game when you were talking, Mace, is when he was plowed over on his way to that Drew Lock stack. That's going to be something that, the coaches point to and say, this is why we have Melvin Gordon. And now I'm not saying that's right, but that's just going to be another thing that people point to and say, that's why Melvin Gordon's in the game.
That's also a bad Phillip Lindsay shouldn't be blocking. I'm blanking on his name, but that's the wrong assignment for him. Mm-hmm. So you're putting him in a position to fail. And that's something that we're seeing across the entire offense throughout the game is guys being put in a position to fail. So it goes both ways. Also, Melvin Gordon absolutely whiffed on the last series as well and got Drew Lock nearly killed. So, it's all over the place. Yeah. But it comes down to putting guys in a position to succeed. And I just really, really don't think it's happening nearly enough. Mace, you talked to most of the people that were you talked to all of the people who talked after the game. So what did we learn?
Well, Drew's gutted emotionally. And I mean, he's a guy who has everything on the surface. There's no hiding anything. When he's happy, it today. I mean, he was bleeding after this, metaphorically speaking. I like seeing that. Jerry Jeudy, I mean, that poor dude, he's never dealt with team failure in his football life. And now he's sitting here on a 3-5 team that has given up 30+ 3 games in a row, that can't seem to play a good first half to save its life. I mean, and you heard I tweeted out the comment, Jeudy saying he's tired of losing. Can you blame him at this point? I mean, he is working his tail off in practice, and that's something that multiple guys talk about. You see the results out there. He's taking the steps that he needs to take, but it takes more than just the occasional. It takes more than just a few players doing great jobs. It takes the entire team. And the other thing is, nobody seems to know what's going on with these early game struggles and how to fix them. That's something that's concerning. I mean, I asked Justin Simmons at the end of his availability about what can be done. How do you remedy this? And he opens by saying, like, that's a good question, but they don't know specifically how to get out of this pattern of digging themselves these huge early holes. I mean, you guys might have seen the stat I put out there on Twitter that only the Jets and the football team trail by 2 scores or more often at halftime than these Broncos.
Yikes, that is not good. And Mace, there's so much that you said to unpack there. My first is a question for you. Last week after the game, Vic Fangio said, even if we wouldn't have scored that final touchdown, even if that pass would have been incomplete at the end of the game, I still would have felt really good about where this team was and where he was trending. With the Broncos making another fourth quarter push here, did he have a similar mentality towards this team? Was he proud of them? Was he disappointed? Did he like the fight at the end, or was it just too little too late?
It felt more like too little too late in this case than really liking the fire. It felt like they were looking at themselves and saying, okay, why are we digging ourselves these holes in the first place? Why can we only seem to play 15 minutes? When are we going to start playing 60? I mean, at this point, I think you'd settle for 30 the way this just 30 minutes and then figure out how to get to 60. I think when it's happening so many times, and you can include the Chiefs game in this as well, digging a 15-point hole there in the first half, it's numbing. It's numbing at this point. I think you're just saying, okay, what's the answer here? Because this keeps happening again and again and again. And you know what? You're not going to face the Chargers every week, and you're not even going to face the Falcons every week. I mean, you go up against a team. Let's say a couple weeks from now, you go up against the Dolphins, who I believe came into this week leading the league in scoring defense. You think you're going to be able to come back if you dig yourself this sort of hole against Miami?
Probably not. No, especially, a young quarterback with a good defense there. They won't let that happen. So, Mason, another thing you said was Drew Lock seemed like he was bleeding emotionally on the inside after this game. We know that's not typically how he is. Is that a good thing or a bad thing that now Drew is down?
Well, you know what? He was down a couple of weeks ago, and look how he came out the next week, especially at the end of that game. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think there are some guys who don't want to let anyone see him sweat.
I think
Drew keeps things on the surface. I mean, he's hurting right now. He's gutted. I think it's only going to make him work harder.
I think that there's a couple sides to it. I think that what we're seeing here is the frustration of the lack of chemistry that he and Pat Shurmur have together. And I think it's driving him nuts. And he knows, whether people think he should look at it or not, he's probably going to open up Twitter at some point today, and he's probably going to read a press clipping or two at some point. It's what most players do, believe it or not. And he knows that when these games happen, the fans are going to be losing their minds, and everyone's going to be saying he's not the answer, and it hurts. It hurts because just a month ago or 2 months ago, everyone loved Drew Lock, and now half the fan base at least is divided on him, and people are calling for his head and saying mean things that I guarantee you, if you go look, just type in his name and see people who have added him on Twitter, you'll find dozens of people, calling him names. So I think he's gutted after games like this because he knows that, people are doubting him when he has a lot of belief in himself, but it's just so frustrating for him that they can't get on the same page together.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there's one other thing that Drew said that I want to ask you guys about, and I apologize if you've already commented on this. What did you think of him saying that throw to Jeudy that was picked off, he would make 10 out of 10 times?
Explain to me what he's saying. He's saying he normally makes that throw 10 out of 10 times?
No, that the decision to throw the ball when you're under pressure, you're off balance, you're falling back.
Really?
That he would choose to crank it and throw it 10 out of 10.
Well, he told us that he and John Elway have some pretty heated discussions after games. Of course, John not at the game today, but that's probably one where, when John's back in the building is saying, no, Drew, you don't make that throw 10 out of 10 times. You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I hate to hear that. What I think if you had a deeper conversation with him about it, I think what he'll tell you is Jerry was open, and I can make that throw. So I will make that throw 10 out of 10 times because I should just completed the pass. I just threw it poorly, which, that's what gunslingers are. And so you're going to have to live with it. What I especially don't like about it is the position on the field that it was. It's the first play of the drive. If that's third down, I say, the kid's trying to make a play. Didn't want to punt. They couldn't afford to punt at that juncture. Or if they're across the 50, and he knows that if he gets that ball into Jerry Jeudy's hands there in field goal range, it's the first play of the drive, Drew. You just don't need to do it. You don't need to do it. There was no throw the ball away or even take the sack and live to fight another down. But I almost guarantee he'd say, look, I knew the play was going to work. It was there. All I have to do is just throw it better, and Jerry's still running right now.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, you make that throw when you're off balance and going off your back foot and all that. How many times do you complete that throw in the NFL with the tight windows and coverages being what they are? That's about even to Jerry Jeudy, that's about a 1 in 10 shot at that point. Whereas at Mizzou, at the college level, even in the SEC, you're going to be able to complete that 3 or 4 times out of 10 if you put it on the money like that. So this is just part of where, this is something he did at Mizzou, and occasionally it worked out. It's not going to work out as often as the NFL. And everything you said, RK, about the situation, first play of the drive, that's on point. You've got to throw it away, live to play another day.
And the throw wasn't even close either. And so it's not like it was just off his fingertips or something.
Mm-hmm.
And Drew is learning, though. Guys, last week there was a play where he's running, and instead of running out of bounds to take a 2-yard loss, he just tosses it out of bounds. And that was progress from what we had seen from multiple weeks in the past. Now, a step back with doing something like this. We need to see him just rebound next week. And maybe he's in the exact same similar situation where there's pressure in his face. He's running. Instead of throwing across his body on his back foot, he just tosses it out of bounds. That would be the progress that we need to see, because Drew's not going to be perfect. By the end of this year, he's not going to be Patrick Mahomes, and that's how we're going to say, okay, this is the guy, because now he's Patrick Mahomes. Now, no, we're just going to have to see him get better and better and better.
Mace, I want to ask you a question that I asked Zach earlier today. If things continue on this track, and let's say things get, it's a mix of good and bad. I'll just say that. It's a mix of good and bad from here on out. There's a lot of frustrating games. There's a couple exciting moments and big flashes from Drew Lock, but it stays on this sort of track. Is there a new quarterback, a new offensive coordinator, neither, or both?
There's a new quarterback to compete with Drew Lock. In other words, you're doing what the Titans did with Marcus Mariota. Someone is being brought in as a hedge. My bet is that it would be Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
If that happens.
Yeah. When you were saying that, that's exactly who I was thinking. Sam Darnold's coming to Denver.
Yeah.
That's a lot to give up to just have a competition.
Yeah, I get it, but you're trying to figure out how to get the quarterback position right. And what you're thinking is, if you're thinking positively and making the deal, you're saying, all right, if you can get Sam Darnold for a 2, then would 2 second-round picks in Drew Lock and Sam Darnold, if you find your quarterback, is 2 second-round picks worth it? You'd have to say yes.
For sure.
So if the cost, now that being said, if Darnold's cost goes up to a first-rounder, I think then the dynamic changes, and you're probably then your hedge is, it's a veteran like a Jameis Winston, perhaps more so than somebody on his first contract.
And offensive coordinator, same, different?
I think unless it's a complete disaster, it's going to be the same, because I really don't think they want to pull the ripcord on another offensive coordinator after 1 year, unless it gets really bad. If it continues like this, I think you'll see Drew Lock back. I think you'll see Pat Shurmur back, but I think you'll see another quarterback come in at least to provide, if not competition, just another possibility. Like I said, a hedge on your bet.
Guys, rank these guys for me. I'm going to give you 4 quarterbacks that could potentially be available for the Broncos next year. 4 guys. Matthew Stafford, because Detroit lost today. Now they're maybe in that conversation at 3 and 5 of, okay, maybe we are looking for another quarterback. Matt Ryan, who we just saw today, who I think the more games he plays, he's not going to be available, but potentially still there. Sam Darnold and Jameis Winston.
I would go in terms of possible for the Broncos.
In terms of which one you would want for the Broncos next year if
Well,
Drew Lock doesn't work out.
If this is the hedge quarterback. So Drew's
Sure.
still here.
Yeah. If Stafford's the guy, then Drew, it's done for Drew.
Yeah.
I don't think the Broncos are going to be willing to say that because I think they're going to see enough. And the other thing with Stafford, the cost probably starts at a first-round pick.
Yep.
With him. And even though he's going to be going into year 13, Matt Ryan, I think you put him kind of down fourth on that list just because the Falcons are playing better. Now, they're about to have some tough games coming up here, but are they going to be in a situation where they're sitting at, say, 6-10 at the end of the year, but can say, we were 6-5 with Raheem Morris. Dirk Cutter is kind of like Kyle Shanahan in terms of being a favored offensive coordinator for Matt Ryan. So Atlanta might be kind of status quo, see what we do next year with this combo together for a full season. And then, so that would, and I'd say Jameis Winston's probably third. So basically, I'd say Darnold 1, Stafford 2, just because I think we'll see enough to where the Broncos don't want to completely move on. But if it's Stafford, it means the next 8 games, guys, were disastrous, or it means that Drew Lock got hurt, and then you're saying, okay, he's injury prone on top of that. So I really hope we're not talking about Matthew Stafford, guys.
Yeah, I think if it's a competition with Drew, then the best person to be there is either Darnold or Winston. Mm-hmm. Matt Ryan isn't going anywhere. He's too good. I saw enough today to say getting rid of him would be idiotic.
His worst throw was effectively a punt today.
Yeah,
think about that.
Yeah, the Broncos didn't do anything with it.
He gets more mobile by the weeks, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, Jeremiah Thatcher didn't even touch him.
Yeah.
That was so bad. That was so bad.
The guy I really felt bad for on that play was Draymond Jones because he's just going in the wrong direction and he's going off in the opposite direction. And because of that, it was one of those plays where I didn't have the binoculars and I'm watching it develop. I'm like, oh my God, Ryan's got 20 yards here if he just gets away.
I just couldn't believe that Matt Ryan moved 5 inches and somehow literally avoided being touched by Jeremiah Thatcher. Bro, you square up and make a play.
Oh my gosh.
Could have been a strip sack.
Yes. Oh man. Okay, the last thing I want to discuss here from a debate perspective is the Broncos' decision and Vic Fangio's decision. You could see it on the TV. He made the decision. I watched his lips say punt it. 4th and 3, was it? 4th and 3, maybe it's 4th and 7. I don't know what it was. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter what it was. From the 41-yard line, 59-yard field goal attempt, decides to punt it down 3-0 early. Your thoughts, Mace?
Oh, well, it was interesting because, there was a timeout involved with that. And
right.
And what happened was that Vic said his instinct was go for it, and Tom McMahon said, no, we need to punt.
Huh.
So
wow.
That means that, and that means the decision in that case would have come from McManus testing pregame to decide whether that distance is good enough or not. Because typically what BMAC does is he goes out there and takes a bunch of shots from different ranges, going at each end of the field, gauges the wind, gauges the conditions, and says, okay, this is my line here.
I'm calling BS.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm calling BS. One, on the they had Jay Feely on this one, so he always gets some good stuff from the kickers. He said that McManus before the game said he's good up to 69 today.
Wow. Okay.
Nice.
What's going on there?
So that makes no sense. And then I watched the reason. This is what I thought happened. And again, I'm not calling Vic Fangio a liar. I'm just telling you what I saw happen. They were going to punt it. Then Tom McMahon comes over to Vic Fangio. They start having a conversation. Vic burns the timeout. Mm-hmm. The conversation goes on, and then I watch Vic Fangio say out loud, punt it. So
Yeah.
What I thought happened was Tom McMahon came over and said, hey, he can make this. He burned the timeout. They talk about it. He's saying, hey, he hit from whatever. And then Vic said, just punt it. Just punt it.
This is something that we need to ask McMahon about at the end of the week, because what Vic said is that McMahon talked him into punting it.
Oh, God, that is so hard to believe. But you know what? I bet Tom McMahon will say, listen, I burned the timeout. I told him to punch it. Everything was my fault. I'm the reason that we didn't get it inside the 15-yard line. I'm the reason the defense gave up a touchdown on that drive.
I was in Drew Lock's head and told him to throw it off his back foot in the fourth.
Oh, my gosh, guys.
Screw this.
I'll never forget when I asked Tom McMahon, like, what does the conversation look like when a coach tells you that a player's too valuable to play on special teams? And he was like so defiant. He was like, there is no conversation. I just say, okay, sir, and we move on.
Man, he's a good guy to have work under you, that's for sure. Or be your boss, because he's just going to fall for everything. He's going to be the fall man for everything. But Ryan, to answer your question, I may be the only one who thinks this, but good call. Oh. Good call to punt it. You are down 3-0. And look, obviously you execute the punt better. You also don't call a timeout. So I wouldn't have done those things either. But if you don't get that, you're in the exact same position that you were in just a couple plays earlier. And you are then right after that giving up that 51-yard touchdown. And then how does that look? So we know how it turned out, but how does that look if then, because they hit on a 51-yard touchdown pass that next drive, they would have got the ball 51 yards away from the end zone there. So then they just go hit a 51-yarder. Then I don't think anyone is saying, I think they should have gone for it.
Zach, I appreciate you being on that hill, because I completely disagree, and it would be interesting. It would not be interesting if we didn't have some disagreement. That's the thing. I can't imagine McMahon is saying that he wouldn't be good from that range, because it's like 68, 70 degrees today. The roof is open. The wind isn't really a factor. I'm pretty sure that McManus would have said, yeah, I can hit it. I mean, we're not at sea level, but we're 1,000 feet up, I think.
Even if McManus didn't think he could hit it, he would have said he could hit it.
Yeah,
it's true.
It doesn't add up. None of this.
And maybe that's why Vic or McMahon, whoever was that called it off, didn't trust him, is because he's going to say he can hit it from however deep.
Yeah. I just, someone in the comments here saying it doesn't matter, we didn't lose by 3. I just thought that was the game. You lost the game. The game got away from you in that moment, as you didn't tie it up, and then they took a 2-score lead. You only were ever able to get it within 1 score from then on. It just, everything happened the worst it could have. And I thought you should have known going into this game, and especially after the first drive was relatively easy for the Falcons to move the ball. You just needed to know that it was going to be a shootout, and you weren't going to be able to play the just punt it back to them and get the ball back quickly.
Well, what's interesting is the Broncos are, I believe, the only team in the NFL to not convert a 4th down this year, and still holds true after this game, 0 for 2.
Wow. Wow.
What about wasn't it 4th down when they threw to Albert Okwuegbunam in the back of the end zone last week?
Yeah, but that wouldn't count as a conversion. It would count as a play because of the penalty.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So.
Whew, I was sweating there.
You went on a technicality. Congratulations.
I think they've had a couple like that. But yeah, you got to be more aggressive. Just be aggressive all the time and just live with the consequences. That's what I believe. Just put the pedal to the floor, and if you crash into a wall, then you feel better about it than just losing the race from going too slow.
And here's the thing: is this game, we talked about it before, was not a must win. It wasn't. Next week and the week after are must win. So then you do have to be aggressive. And because, if you lose next week, the season's probably over. You're sitting at 3-6, but give it all you have and do those aggressive things, because the worst thing is you don't convert those and you lose. You got to give yourself a chance by being aggressive. So next week and the week after, I'd be more on your side.
100% on that. You're going into must-win territory. The only thing that happened today is you burned up your margin for error. But the next 2 games were always the most important of this run. It was always going to be the AFC games that mattered most in this 4-game stretch before they take on the Saints. So you know what? You're still got a pulse. You're still got a heartbeat. But now you can't start slow. Look, you can't. That's I think the first thing for next week in Vegas. Don't dig yourself that 14-point hole in the first half. Actually come out and play better and keep the thing on even terms for a while.
Always good advice.
I will be so relieved if they start the game with like a scripted drive that plays to the strengths of Drew Lock in this offense, and they go put it in the end zone.
And the other thing is, I would hope that next week it won't look like this for the defense. You hope AJ Boye gets through the protocol. You hope you have Bryce Callahan back. You should have Shelby Harris back. I think it looks a lot different on the defensive side because, for all we're talking about Drew Lock, part and parcel of this game today is they weren't able to get pressure. They couldn't play Russian cover, and it got out of hand too quick.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, want to give a shout out to Breckenridge Brewery, the best damn beers in the universe. I've got my mug here, Breck Brews. I think everyone could probably use a Breck Brew after that one. So check them out. I recommend the Strawberry Sky. That's my personal favorite, but they're really all good top to bottom. They just came out with the Juice Drop IPA, a new IPA in their family. Excited to try that one. Might even see if that mixes well with the Strawberry Sky for a alternate RK special. But shout out to them and to anyone who's watching this on YouTube. We'd love if before you logged off, you hit us with a little thumbs up on the video and maybe subscribe to our channel as well. But for today, that's going to wrap it up for us on the DNVR Broncos postgame. We'll be, of course, right back with you guys tomorrow morning on the podcast. So tune in with us then. But until then, have a great rest of your Sunday.